So how much do decisions matter in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2? Well, some of them do quite a bit actually. While the overall story will still unfold relatively the same, there are some key moments where your choices will play a big role into who gets to live, if various settlements get destroyed, the rewards you get, all the way to the trophies needed if you want to also platinum the game. For the sake of this video, I'm going to focus primarily on the main story for now, as well as some extra secret outcomes that the game doesn't even tell you about. That's why I want to also give everyone a big spoiler warning ahead, as we will talk about important moments in Henry's journey. That being said, a first and surprising big decision comes very early, around the time Henry helps Miller KhrazeGaming so that he can gain access to Lord Semine's wedding. During this, you get the option to help him in his alchemical endeavor of discovering the recipe for black powder. However, what the game doesn't tell you, and what you can completely miss out on, is that you can actually report his dangerous activities to Bailif back at Troskowitz. If morbid curiosity takes the better of you, this is completely possible, and the end of this quest changes a lot. So you can reveal these details to the Bailif at any point before you find the Lightbringer's secret alchemy manual during Opus Magnum KhrazeGaming's last mission in the chain. Finding that manual is possible way before that point, but on a first playthrough you likely do it right after the quest back in the saddle upon freeing Capon and opening up the Trotsky castle. During this, you'll follow some clues, inquire the locals, which eventually brings you to the castle privy just outside of the western wall. Here you will find Nigvard, the last person seen with that manual, and the manual will be a bit further up in the sewage. Bringing this manual to Miller KhrazeGaming and only following his request from here will bring you the grand finale of his mission, which is going to be absolutely worth it. However, if you want to play as the scummiest of the scum, after giving that book in, the game now gives you the completely optional choice of also calling in the Bailif, assuming that you notified him before, and also doing this before KhrazeGaming actually finishes off his experiment. After a quick confrontation that I can only describe as completely heartbreaking, KhrazeGaming gets branded as a heretic and defier of the king's will, which can only result in summary hanging of him as well as everybody else who helped him. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is the worst possible outcome of any outcome whatsoever. There's literally no reason to do any of this. And here's the kicker, this isn't even the only occasion in which you pull off something like this.
You've gone mad. Or you're possessed by the devil. Either way, you're dangerous and we have to stop you.
You can't distinguish between reason and emotion. I wanted to open your eyes, but you clearly didn't understand a word of what I was trying to teach you.
That's enough.
Beautiful.
Now, the next we have For Whom the Bell Tolls. This next part isn't really much of a branching choice narrative, but rather a choice in how the player completes the whole mission. Here, you're in a race against time. Your goal is to save Capon, which only Captain Thomas can do, as he's the only one who can vouch for him being a noble, but he's sick at the very top of one of the towers. So the game here throws a lot of choices at you, and it's hard to resist the temptation of completing all of them, since you're pretty much being conditioned up until this point to solve everything in a completionist manner. But this is going to be the wrong choice. Instead, the game here gives you a few lessons to resist that very thought, break the mold, and instead focus on what's important. So if you ignore literally everybody and their menial tasks from the outer wall, you can straight away go to the kitchen area, since that's going to be unrestricted. Go ahead and talk to the Chamberlain, who's actually in control of the castle and able to give you full access to everything. But he's suffering from a stomach ulcer, and that you can promise to cure. Skill checks here should be rather easy. Even if you fail some of them, he'll still find his treatment much more urgent than everything else, so he will immediately give you unrestricted access to almost the entire castle. Now, with that access being secured, we need to treat Thomas, who's at the very top of the tower we're currently in. But if we paid attention to the Chamberlain previously, he already told us that the scribe at the castle handles all the alchemy related stuff, so now we need to actually head over towards his chambers in the other tower. Unfortunately, he proves to be unhelpful, well, at the very least, conscious, which is why we're going to choke the heck out of him. In this case, we can now grab the key and look around his whole area. Basically, in one of these chests right here, we can find the fever tonic that we actually need to treat Thomas, without doing anything else on top. No lockpicks, no menial tasks, no carrying sacks or anything of sorts. So what we can do now is head over back, sneak the same way into Thomas's room, and now we can give him this tonic, point at which the whole mission gets completed in pretty much 10 minutes at max. Admittedly, this isn't something you can easily spot on a first playthrough and will likely take a specialized run until you realize what everybody's role is in that quest. But even so, the game does throw quite a few hints at you, and even one of the NPCs from that mission is specifically there just to waste your time. I'm talking about the blacksmith. Not only in this mission, but literally even in one after this, he sends you on a wild goose chase to every latrine in the castle just to mess up with you. So I guess the lesson to be learned here is that you shouldn't trust NPCs too much. A lot of them will actually deceive you in this game on purpose. Now the next decision, which I would say is completely missable, happens during Back in the Saddle on your first visit to Nebakov. It doesn't take a genius to realize bandits are now running that fortress, though antagonizing them right away isn't the best solution either. However, it's also certainly not the only one. So here's two possible outcomes. You befriend everybody and just take part in every single side objective you can, which is by far the most rewarding. So winning the horse race gives you one of the best saddles at that point in the game, repeating the archery challenges gives you a massive boost to marksmanship levels, helping out Clara opens up 2 romance options with her, plus investigating around reveals the actual lord is taken hostage beneath the main tower. And this is how you normally go on your first playthrough. However, there's another somewhat hidden choice. At any point during or before leaving, you can literally massacre the whole fortress and pretty much everyone in it, Clara included, which is going to affect how one of the fights happen a little bit later in the main story. Besides that, there's only small changes happening from here until that mission, so this will cause Capon to immediately flee instead of taking the route back peacefully with you. Back at von Berghoff, you'll still announce him that the fortress is overrun by bandits and that the former lord is held captive. This, however, does have that unintended effect, so during the Finger of God mission a bit later, when Godwin and Zizka have to protect the fortress from a rebellion, you will notice that literally everybody else besides you two are completely gone, and that is because Henry took care of them during the previous mission, making this part that much more difficult because it's now basically just you versus like 10 or so highly equipped traders. However, as far as I can tell, that was about the only consequence that existed from the main story. Nobody literally even bats an eye at the fact that Henry a few moments ago massacred everybody. The only thing that changes besides the fact that the fight is more difficult is that there's not going to be any extra objectives since you literally disposed of everybody. So this also includes that extra romance scene with Clara if you have also taken her down, but at the very least you also don't have to treat anybody. But the actual first true impactful decision happens during the preparation phase of the Necessary Evil mission. On your way back from Nebakov, you and Capon are tasked to torture a prisoner for some information on the bandit leader. As long as the prisoner doesn't die, the only thing your choice of inflicting pain or not on the prisoner affects only your moral standpoint, which can influence the ending, otherwise the mission structure remains the same. From here, there are two big branching choices upon reporting back to von Berghoff. If you report only that the bandits control Nebakov and that nobody helped the bandits during the raid, then this completely avoids the raid in Semine, which also gives you the Silence is Golden trophy. This is the only way in which you can actually reach that point. However, if you do report that they were helped by Lord Semine, or if at any point before this you mentioned that Lord Semine missed a part of his wedding, it will be very difficult to avoid the raid from this point on. In this situation, what you're going to do is basically accompany Hasheg and a dozen or so other von Berghoff soldiers to raid Semine. Once again, the game here branches into two possible outcomes. So if you side with Hasheg, the raid goes as planned, everyone gets massacred, and the entire place is set on fire, which means getting locked out of every single side mission left uncompleted or any other minigame, plus you will no longer have access to the interior of the village. If you instead side with Semine, or if when discovering Olda at the top of the shed you choose to set him free, you will then have to take down Hasheg and every one of the von Berghoff men accompanying him. In this outcome, at least the two of them will still continue living, but the outcome remains the same, with the whole place being set on fire and the remaining Semines having to leave the country. Later on, Henry will have some extra dialogues about the burned down Semine, but in all situations where the raid happens, no matter the outcome, that trophy is going to be lost. But I digress. The next big decision will happen during the Dancing with the Devil mission, when you have the choice to burn Maleshov village or not. So if you want to earn the No Good Deed trophy, you will want to fight and win against the Dry Devil in a duel at this moment to avoid the whole massacre. Given Henry's past, with his own village and parents suffering from a similar fate, this is the most fitting option and the one that I would say is most appropriate for his ending. This, however, will mean the fortress is going to continue to be packed with soldiers, and thus the next part is going to be much harder as a result. But because by this point you should be a literal shinobi of how OP stealth is in this game, even that cannot stop you. This also means that many of Zhishka's men will die in the final assault, something that he'll retort to you once you're back at Sugdol. But the evil option, on the other hand, is to go with Dry Devil's plan, which opens up a completely different branch of that mission, one in which you get to burn down the whole village of Maleshov. His men will set every house on fire, resulting in countless casualties, but this will make it easier to pick off the soldiers who leave the fortress to provide help. Next morning, however, you can further see the aftermath, with the whole village burned down and many villagers in desperation for the loss of their loved ones. Truly heartbreaking and something that you should only do on the scummiest of scummiest playthroughs. But leading into the assault, the same scene of climbing the wall plays out from here. However, there's an entirely missable part with a fight that involves rescuing Lady Rosa. On my other playthrough, threatening to burn down the castle or immediately going to negotiations completely skipped the mission to von Berghoff surrendering without having to do any more fighting inside of the main tower. However, there is a secondary option, so if you choose the route to let's make a deal, pick this intimidation option, and I refuse to put Rosa in danger, and then I'll try to rescue Rosa, this is then going to let you go inside of the castle and fight some soldiers. This is a completely missable fight, but if you do win it, it's going to cause the same outcome. Von Berghoff and everybody else inside will surrender, and now you can progress in the story. However, keep in mind that if you choose the option to burn down the castle, you're going to lose a ton of reputation with Rosa, meaning that you're going to get locked out of, most probably, from her romance option. But this brings us to possibly the last story mission with possibly the highest number of long-lasting decisions, and that's going to be during story mission Reckoning. When you get to sneak into the enemy camp to find Samuel just before leaving to get some help during the siege of Sugdol, you stumble upon Brabant interrogating him right here in this barn. There are two choices here and you'll hate the good one. So starting with the evil one, this is likely the one that you chose. In this one, you're going to kill Brabant outright. I'm not going to lie, I sometimes just reload the save file just for the satisfaction. But this also means the camp never gets alerted and it makes saving Samuel significantly easier from this point on. However, it's also going to affect your reputation for the good ending if you want to be with complete clear conscience from this point. But there's also the good option, luckily. In this one, you let Brabant live, as he makes a promise to not alert anyone and even promises ending the siege. However, obviously, he's just going to double-cross you again before starting to shout, alerting the whole camp. Now, you will be free from this point on to kill him, but the guards will be on high alert from this point on, even if there was nobody close to Brabant at the time of the shootout. But this option will help if you want the good ending, so that is why it's recommended to follow this way. Before you leave the camp, however, there's another place you want to visit with another set of choices, and that's going to be von Aulitz. During the final interrogation of Brabant, he reveals von Aulitz is actually bedridden somewhere in the camp from his injuries, and you can go ahead and pay him a visit. So in this case, you have a few options. You can either ignore this whole situation, which is completely anticlimactic and something that you should simply not do, or B, confront him at his house. Luckily, it should not be too difficult to sneak in. There's going to be a guard here that you can easily rob for the key and then go by the second door right inside of von Aulitz's chambers, point at which you're going to unlock the face-to-face trophy. This is, by the way, the only way to unlock it. Only if you visit him at this stage will you actually get it. So talking to him will then give you three options. Give him a dignified death, slaughter him like a dog, or just leave him be, succumbing to his wounds. Again, if you want to score some extra points and not have a guilty conscience, the non-evil option here is obviously to just leave him be. Von Aulitz still gets to die alone, forgotten, and in pain anyway, plus you get to prolong his suffering just a little bit more. But before leaving, you can also get some very strong Nuremberg Noble armor sets from here. Opening up these chests provides some of the best rewards in the game. Also, a Nuremberg armor set with a black coloring that you may like, as well as a bunch of documents straight from Sigismund. Plus, once the siege is over, you can visit that room once again with him laying on the bed, dead and forgotten. But like I said, the achievement will only trigger if you first confronted him during that sneaking mission. If you did not do that, ignored it, and came in at a later date, you're not going to get that trophy. But like I said, before you actually leave the camp entirely, there's one final set of choices: to save Samuel or not. So there's no reason to not save Samuel. You can simply carry him and then turn right side over here. There should be only 1 or 2 soldiers that you can easily distract with a rock throw. Once you get close to the stables, you can just leave with him, and this means Samuel survives, but the silver will be stolen by the time you get back with all of the reinforcements. But if you, however, leave Samuel to his death, this is going to be the bad choice. This means your trip to call reinforcements will take way less time, which means on your way back, you will make it in time to save the silver that you stole, but Samuel will be dead at this point, found hanged just outside of the camp as a last middle finger from the soldiers before they got repelled. This will open up a completely different scene at the end of the game, where you will help prepare for his funeral. If you've done all of this, every single one of your choices, both from the main story and even some from outside of the main story, will count towards how good or evil your parents see you at the end dialogue in the main narrative. So in this case, I was a bit of both, and I was still able to have the good outcome, especially if you choose the dialogues to repent and say sorry during those moments. But you can equally say that you have no regrets, point at which your parents will just be very disappointed. Similarly, if you've committed a lot of petty theft, if, for example, you tortured people when you had the choice during main missions, those will also be taken into account during that conversation and will even be mentioned. But like I said, you can easily atone, and of course you can also choose good dialogue options if you continue to progress in missions. And that is pretty much it with it. Let me know down below if there's other big choices in side quests, for example, that you know of. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.